Hi, I'm Troy Schill with Schill Racing and Performance, and today we're going to be assembling a Tillotson 267cc engine. These are the parts I'll be using today to build this 267cc engine. DLC coated 59mm crankshaft. We've had to do some slight clearance work too. DLC coated lifters. DLC coated wrist pin that's thicker than the standard EC. Black Venom 1:3 ratio rockers. 1/4-inch DED cut to length push rods. EC 8282 rod. ARC 6057 dual bearing side cover. EC carburetors hyper-pneumatic 3-inch piston. We've had 25 thousandths taken off the top. OMB warehouse billet valve cover. ARC 6689 billet flywheel. We have the EC carburetors Evolution head 3227 valve. I've had resurfaced with a fire ring put in. Has GP 965 springs with titanium retainers. Dyno Cams billet 335 camshaft. Total seal ported ring. EC carburetors third bearing support. A 30mm Keyhine carburetor. We have a 32 thousandths copper head gasket. F&B stage 4 exhaust. For venting, we'll be using 3/8 barbs and 3/8 hose. Tillotson 3-inch block, and we have drilled out the oil hole. I'll be running Burris head studs. Nachi Technologies bearing. So we've already put a seal for the crank, a crank seal in. Went ahead and froze the bearing for a couple hours. She should just drop right in. There we go. Put one circlip in for the wrist pin. I'm going to be using Thor Heavy. I want to get Make sure you can move it freely in there. Anything moves free. Alright, we'll lube up the bearings. What we are gonna do is we're gonna put it in there. We're gonna tighten the rod down. And we are gonna check all of our clearances. Drop the rod in with the piston with no rings. And put the cap on. I have already pre-clearanced everything, right at 3 thousandths for rod clearance. The DLC coating does not add any clearancing issues. Always dip your bolts in oil. And we are going to torque it down to 170 inch-pounds, working our way up from 90. Alternating between each bolt. Hundred and 70 inch-pounds. Look for the dot. It's kind of hard to see. Look for the dot on these billet cams. You got a couple of them, but I'm just looking for that one right there. Line the two dots up. Make sure everything lines up, and it does. And then I already have some dowels in. Cover I have cut up for a clearancing tool. We'll slide this on. Boom. Got 2 bolts in it. We're just gonna get them to finger tight because we don't have a gasket in there. Everything tightens up. We don't have any in play. So, I'm gonna look up in here. I'm gonna spin it the correct way. I'm gonna see if anything touches. With this A282 EC rod and the 59mm crankshaft, you really don't have much clearance work at all, other than piston and the slight crankshaft clearancing I showed you. Got that piston right at 0 deck height. Now, since we've rotated it over and everything looks good, take the side cover off, take the piston and rod out. And we will install rings. We'll be installing piston rings. Start with the oil scraper. Well, top compression ring, or bottom compression ring, I'm sorry. I have gapped it to 24.5 thousandths. This is the total seal ring. Want to make sure the ports go up. We've gapped it to 19.5 thousandths. The minimum total ring recommends is 18. I'm just going to slowly work it on. Top ring is always the easiest. Now we're going to pack the rings with oil. Lube the cylinder up. Okay. Lube up the inside. Now, if you have head studs, you have to be kind of wary where you put a clamp here to get in the way of your head studs. Grab a mallet. Make sure everything is tight on that board. Then you just tap that piston down in there. Just like that. After you drop her down in there, Always like to rotate the crank on it. And I'll go up and down a few times, pushing back on the piston, just so it kind of straightens it out. If you put it in there and it was off angle in it kind of straightens it out before you tighten it up. We're gonna install the rod cap, just like we had once before. All these bolts up one more time and get them in there, and this will be the last time we have to torque them down. Oh, the lifters. Push those in. Like so. After you get your lifters in, make sure everything's nice and oiled up. Oil up your camshaft, lobes, everything. Make sure your dot is right there. Okay, line up your dots. Little back history on this particular motor was I had it together last year. I had 3 shims in it for the spacing, so that's where we're going to start with, 2 thick and 1 thin. And so that's where we're going to start for the crank spacing. So I'm going to oil up our crank and cam bang as much as we can. It'll get around. And we will throw our billet side cover on that we're using 4 solid dowels in for block rigidity. I'm going to torque all the side cover bolts in the 18 foot-pounds in a star pattern. We'll check our crankshaft in play. It looks pretty close. We're going to be using Permatex copper gasket seal on the bottom surface of the gasket. I'm going to torque down the head 20 foot-pounds with the burst head studs. That's what they recommend. Now that we got the head torqued down, I'm going to go ahead and put the flywheel on. After you get your flywheel nut on there, we're going to go ahead and give it some ugga-duggers. We're gonna call that good. And we got our flywheel torqued to spec. We're going to throw the coil on there. I'm gonna set our coil gap to right at 55 thousandths. We got 3 business cards and a sticker. And we will go ahead and install the 3rd bang support. Go ahead and oil up our push rods and set those down in there. lash caps and some oil. Lash caps on there. These are EC lightweights, 5mm lash caps. Once you get your push rods set in your rocker arms, go ahead and tighten those down. I'm going to tighten those to, I believe it's between 10 and 12 foot-pounds. We're going to go with 12. Make sure your rocker arm stays loose. You don't want to be tightening down on the spring. Once you got your rocker arms torqued down, I'm gonna check the valve clearance. And then make sure on top dead center. On top. It's right at 3,000. And now we can spin it over. Check everything. Once you're satisfied, have your gasket, put your valve cover on. And we can go ahead and put this carburetor on there. Here. Tight. We have a copper exhaust gasket. We are going to put copper seal spray on. I'm going to hit and seal both sides. Slide it on there. Locks. Once you get your exhaust tightened down and your brace, the last thing you're going to do is throw a spark plug in it. Do your tubing. Boom, boom. Boom. And that goes out to the oil catch can. And thanks for watching, guys. That's how you build a Tillotson 267cc. I would like to give a special shout out to Chris Byron with THB Mini Bikes. He supplied the DLC crank, lifters, wrist pin. He ended up doing my piston work and putting my fire ring in on my head. I would like to thank Jimmy Rivers with JRPW Racing for honing my block. And I'm not sponsored anyway by any of these people, but they did help me along the way and supplied the parts I needed for this build. Thank you very much for watching.